Dr. George Simons is the Associate Director of the Hidden Valley Center for Men. It's a California nonprofit organization founded for the purpose of educating and training men in skills which will help them to grapple successfully with the personal and interpersonal challenges caused by today's changing male roles, working conditions, and social expectations. Dr. Simons, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Wanda. Nice
Would
to
you
be here.
tell us about this new book of yours that you're putting together, How to Love an Angry Woman? What kind of women are you referring to?
Well, it's really not what kind of women we're referring to. It's the experience of men that when a woman is angry, we haven't got the slightest idea about what to do. And I'm sure that women who are listening to this show have had the experience of he either disappears or he
becomes
flustered or decides I'm not going to be able to handle this and tries to ignore it, or he tries to fix it real quick, or in some cases thinks if he hits her up the side of the head it'll work better.
Some of them seem to feel that way.
So men have this experience of not knowing how to deal with women's anger and other strong emotions.
Does this also say that they don't know how to deal with other kinds of anger that they also will feel from time to time?
Well, dealing with our own anger is another issue, but we're comfortable with men's anger. We grow up with competition, and we meet men on the playing field, and women are constantly astounded, for example, that two men can get into a terrible argument, whether it's on a ball field or in a board meeting, and then a half an hour later, these two guys are having a beer together. Women say, if I got that angry with anybody, I'd never talk to them again for the rest of my life. So there's some real differences between men's anger and women's anger, and it's helping men to understand women's anger that I'm all about.
Well, why is it that they don't understand the anger that we have, or they don't understand it and they don't really know how to deal with it? They're not comfortable with it.
Well, first of all, a lot of women's anger has had to go underground. It depends on what culture and background and family you're from. But basically, women have got the message that it's not okay to be angry. I mean, there's that cultural message that it's not ladylike, that
Sure.
good girls don't get angry, and so on. So traditionally, now I say traditionally because women have had 25 years to sort of regroup their identities with the current women's movement and try new things. But still that message is real strong in society that says, you know, it's not okay for you to be angry. So women's socially accepted ways of expressing anger for years have been crying.
Right.
And men don't understand that. As soon as she cries, I come over and want to take care of her, make it
And that's
nice,
the last
make
thing
it
that
good.
women want.
And she either goes cold salmon or
say, buzz
get out
off,
of here, buzz
right?
off. Right. See? So it's sometimes confusion. You know, if a woman is angry with a man and he's making some demands on her, she'll just say, I just don't know what to do. So the ways in which women have been allowed to express anger have been different from men's expression of anger. And we misunderstand each other.
Give me an idea of the age of the men or the man that we are talking about here.
I'm talking about just about any man you can name. We've had men from the ages of 18 to 78 come to our workshops. We do a workshop called For Men Only, How to Love and Live and Work with Women. And we just did a group of college students a couple of weeks ago, and most of them were around 18. Some of them were dealing with mother, and others of them were dealing with their girlfriends. And then we have, I would say most of our guys are in the middle age range, in their 30s and 40s and 50s, early 50s at least. But it's any man, really, who has to deal with women, usually does not come equipped in this life to do that.
That's because of the way that boys are raised versus the way that girls are raised, that
Sure.
we are supposed to be comforted, protected, and all of that.
Yeah.
And you guys go out and get banged up and yell and scream and cuss a lot and all of that.
But also, look, Wanda, at the number of magazines that exist for teenage girls to learn how to become beautiful and deal with men in their lives. There's no equivalent for those for boys.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Right, yeah. We don't
How
have
do
that
you
kind of
teach
training.
them to be comfortable? How do you teach them to begin to understand and not to run away?
Well, that's the hard part. Stay in the room. We interviewed about 300 women, and stay in the room was the thing they most wanted from men when men were angry.
And the guys are
Yeah,
saying, no way.
yeah. So what we do is we show men that men and women really come from two completely different cultures. You are touched, talked to, talked about, given different role models than we are from the moment you're born till the moment you die, because you're a woman.
Okay.
And I'm given different ones because I'm a man. And that means that we're as different as Americans from Chinese.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you have to start off with the basics first.
Absolutely. We have to recognize that the training of women and the education of women and the experience of women is totally alien to us as men.
All right, well, how do you handle the guy who comes in and says, Doc, I already know that. I mean, I know that they're different. I know that culturally they're different. I know that they've been raised differently and the whole bit, but they still can't deal with it.
Okay, the real task is teaching a man how to find out about the woman who's important to him, because she's an individual. So she's been through all this training. Maybe she's a feminist, maybe she's not a feminist. Nonetheless, she's a unique individual, and so we teach men how to ask questions and listen to the individual, we call them inner conversations the woman has about what her life should be like, what her relationship should be like, and so on. And we also teach men how to share, because usually men run away because they don't know what to say next either. The traditional thing.
They don't think that silence is golden.
No,
sometimes.
and you know what women always say to me? Tell me what you're feeling. You know what that looks like to a man? Tell me what you're feeling, you know. And then she follows it up by, tell me that you love me, all right? And that's not men's language. We don't process information that way. You know, you say, tell me what you're feeling to a man, and he has to and then he comes out with something, but it's not exactly
wrong,
what the woman
whatever
is
it is
looking
that
for. Right.
that he came
Right,
up
it's
with.
wrong, yeah.
So I guess what you're saying is that what you're trying to do is get men to get in touch with their feelings?
That's how a woman would say that. That's the perfect way that a woman would say that.
All right, now wait a minute.
Okay. Now, if you want to get more information from a man, don't ask him what he's feeling. Ask him, what are you telling yourself about that? See, for example, if I'm a man and I'm angry about something, let's put the shoe on the other foot. Say I get a little message from the IRS which says, we'd like to look at your taxes, Mr. Simons. And I go home, I don't say to myself, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to lose some money, or this is going to be terrible. I say, who those IRS think they are? We're coming after you in a minute. So, beneath that, maybe my fear that I'm going to spend an awful lot of time getting my taxes together, that I'll be penalized and all that other sort of stuff. So men are allowed to use anger as ways of expressing their fears, their doubts, their confusions, and so on. But if you as a woman see that anger, your temptation is, I'm going to get out of the way of that, rather than saying to them, oh, what are you saying to yourself about that? What's that mean to you? So we encourage women to ask those kind of questions of men.
What you're saying, too, is we've got to have some dialogue with each other. We've got to begin communicating. So you're saying we haven't been talking.
Yeah, we have to talk, and we have to talk at a different level than we usually talk, because a lot of what we usually do is blame. I blame you because you're different from me as a woman. And, you're wrong. I make you wrong, or you make me wrong as a man. I just picked up a paperback book today. I don't want to promote this one, but it's called Picking on Men. And it's about 150 quotations of how bad men are. And, there's a lot of blame going on, and I don't want it for a moment to tell women that their plight or their difficulties with men are not real. But men are living with a bad rap today. I mean, we are the warmongers, we are the batterers, we are all of those things that are wrong with the world today. And it's real hard for us to deal with that.
In other words, you're talking about making change.
Making change, absolutely.
Doctor, stay with me. Coming up, some messages, and then Newstalk continues. Dr. George Simons is my guest. He's in the process of writing a book. It's entitled How to Love an Angry Woman, and we have been trying to get a handle on not only on the title, but to also say that you're not talking so much about the angry woman as it is that you're talking about the lack of communication that exists between men and women. You're also talking about the fact that men handle their anger differently than we do. You're talking about the way that the boys are raised versus the way the girls are raised. Now, this impacts as you grow up, as you get married and have children. This impacts on your children. This also impacts on your family environment.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How do you bring about positive change there?
Well,
or create a positive environment?
This is difficult. It takes hard work, and what we absolutely insist on is that men learn specific skills of communication. We really teach language. It's important. We tell them right off, we don't work with psychology. This is not therapy. We're not trying to make you feel better. We're teaching you some new skills. We're teaching you how to talk to a woman, how to make commitments, what to do when commitments break down, what to do when expectations aren't met. We tell them it's like a golf swing, you know, and changing from the overlapping grip to the interlocking grip or vice versa. I'm not much of a golfer, but you know, making that change is always awkward and it requires learning some things. Men need to learn to talk to women better.
Now, you mentioned the word commitment. Don't most men make a commitment? I mean, when you walk down the aisle and you say, I do, you make a commitment that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to take care of you and all the rest of that?
Well, it's true. We do make commitments, although my impression is that women complain that men are very long in coming by those commitments. It takes a long time to nailing down
Sure.
to doing that. But I'm talking about the little specific commitments that make everyday work, like I'm going to do this and it shows up. And also making commitments explicit, like, gee, it would be nice if we spent the weekend together, is not asking for anything. And the person says, yeah, it would be nice too, is not making a commitment that I'm going to take you out to the woods and then to a movie and all that. And if later on you say to me, well, how come we didn't do these things? We weren't clear about it. So I'm teaching men and women indirectly to be very definitive about what they want and how to create that inside of their marriage.
Doctor, is also a part of this fear?
Sure. Sure, we're always, we don't know what's coming next. We're afraid to risk new behavior.
But you guys are supposed to be so right on target in terms of your professional environment, your professional lives. You are right on target. You strategize. You go into a meditation type of a situation almost in order to make the right decisions. Is that to say that you do not care as much about your personal relationships as you do about your professional relationships?
Hey, look at my suit. I'm all set
It's
to
great.
go. You know,
Right?
This is what we men do. We make the big front, and then we fill in behind. Women, on the other hand, look at a risky situation, and they want to take care of all the stuff that's behind. You ask a man, will you do that? And they say, sure, I'll do it. And then he doesn't know where he's going to get the money, but he figures he's going to do it. You know, he's going to get the resources to do it.
Sure.
So we men, you know, show our big defense system. You know, it goes all the way from the White House down. I mean, there's no Star Wars defense system, but, you know, we've got this up and going, and it's a whole big negotiating thing. That's the way boys play the game.
What about when we communicate with one another? That body language sometimes is taken on as being more important than the actual words that we speak.
Well, it's true. I mean, the interpretation of the words that I speak to you has a lot to do with my tone of voice, how I move, how close and how distant I am. And so body language becomes very important. It's also important to realize that men and women have the experience of different kinds of body language being directed at them because they are men and because they are women.
Oh, well, how do you make that distinction?
Say that again.
How do you make that distinction? If there is body language that is that says directly male, and there is body language that says directly female.
Okay. Take for an example, I had this experience. I was in a store, and there was a woman with a double pram twins, and her girlfriend came up to her, and she hadn't seen her for a long time, and she hadn't seen the babies. Oh, you know, did all the cooing, and then congratulations. And then she was sort of confused for a moment. She saw pink ribbons and blue ribbons. Immediately, she got real close to a little girl, touched her, and said, "Isn't she the cutest little thing in the world?" You know. And then she got much more distance from like, "And isn't he a big, strong?" So, actually, we are communicating at a nonverbal level, male and female identity, before we even know it. You know, buying our little boys Cabbage Patch dolls and giving Transformers to our girls is not going to make a significant difference. It's much deeper than that. It will make some difference. I think it's important for boys and girls to be encouraged to cross over some of those artificial role lines.
You know, the language skills that you talked about, perhaps that's not a phrase that we have always used, but in other books that have been written, in other classes that you perhaps have gone to, that people have talked about your communicating skills and understanding that what you want to do is to be totally honest with yourself about who you are, what you are, and why you are. And that really is what you're saying.
Yes, and knowing yourself and knowing the other person. Starting to listen in on these inner conversations which tell you what's right for a man, what's wrong for a man, what's good for a woman, and so on.
Well, how do you become a good listener? And you can make those kinds of distinctions.
I think the first trick is to become curious. That's what we try to instill in men. Say, you know, the woman you may have known for 20 years is still an enormous mystery. We've gone to outer space, and the last frontier for men is understanding women.
I think a lot of people would be shaking their heads and say,
Yeah.
you're really right when you stop to think
And
about
it may be the other way around, but, you know, we men talk about our great adventures, and we always want to scale the mountains and achieve. And so I challenge men to understand women. That means asking a lot of questions and listening a lot and not assuming that you know what she means when she says something to you.
Because of the title is so intriguing, How to Love an Angry Woman. Is it part of the reason that you wrote this book is that perhaps we have spent so much time and so many books have been written about women and our feelings and our situations and trying to cope with working conditions and changing roles and all these kinds of things that you kind of think that the guys have been left to drift a little bit?
They were jealous, maybe.
Yeah, that you guys are jealous.
In a sense, really, men need some ministering too. Men need some attention because their roles are changing, if for no other reason than in response to women's roles. And we made a commitment at our center to work explicitly with men because there's tons of things around for women, and they're done in a women's way. So we're trying to teach men in a way that men learn best how they can do the things that will help them understand the women who are part of them and play their new roles more effectively.
Do you think a sequel is going to be necessary?
I think we're going to be working on these things right on into the 25th century, men and women.
It sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Dr. Simons, thank you very much for being with me.
Pleasure.
Coming up, some messages, and then Newstalk continues.